Hello guys and welcome back to the Legend of Zelda series, and today we're going to be talking about level design. And not only level design, but good level design. How do you get that good level, that good scenery, right? The good scene. So, to start off, level design is a game development discipline that involves the creation of video game levels, locals, missions, or stages. Now, that's what level design is, but what is good level design? Well, good level design is fun to navigate. So when you're creating your level, when you're creating your scene, your world, you need to keep in mind that it needs to be fun to navigate. Next, good level design does not rely on words to tell the story. So don't rely on dialogue and text to tell the story. Your level design, your world should tell the story automatically. Good level design tells the player what to do, but not how to do it. So make sure when, let's just say you're creating a puzzle, you don't want to tell the player how to do it, but you want to tell the player what to do. You know, moving a block out of the way, that's pretty simple. Automatically, you know what to do. You don't want to make it super complex. Now, next, good level design constantly teaches the player something new. That's pretty simple. And finally, good level design is surprising. So you want to surprise your players with fun, different things to do. Now, how do we incorporate this into our game? Or how do we incorporate this into creating a good level? Because this is just what you should do when you're trying to create your world. But how do you actually create your world? So how do we use these basic principles in our game, right? So we're going to go over 6 basic things on how to actually use this for creating your world. So what are the steps to creating a world that's great? So earlier you saw the basic principles of what you should do when you're creating your world. But how do you actually create that world? So first off, you want to start with an idea. Ideas are definitely everywhere and you have them all the time. Whether your ideas are deliberate or spontaneous, you have to write them down, or you kind of won't remember them, right? So, to generate ideas deliberately, you must begin to see everything around you as possible playable game space. Begin to shift your perspective from everyday locations to seeing possible playable spaces within these locations. Alright, so again, you want to start off with an idea. And once you have that idea set in stone, written down on paper, you may have to go through a couple iterations of different ideas, okay? Now, next, step 2, setting, location, and theme. Environment setting is a general physical location of where your game environment takes place. Where does it take place? Urban or rural, interior or exterior? What about the time period, right? So location is the actual place where your idea is set. It is a more specific place within the environment setting. Now, theme is the subject matter of your location. It is a unifying and dominant idea that brings your environment together. Theme is more abstract, such as a particular design, style, time of day, time in history, weather, atmosphere, mood, feeling, or even an event. Now, once you have your setting, your location, and theme, again, written down, you want to go to photo reference and research. So step 3. You can't really create a realistic and authentic game environment without collecting, studying, and using image references. With environment setting, location, and theme, purpose, and features defined, looking for photo references will be a lot easier. You'll know exactly what you need to search for. Now, you should probably go collect the following references for stuff like environment and location references, set design and prop references, lighting references, style and visual development references in general. Now, again, after you have your photo references, you have them saved to your computer, you know exactly what you're going to be doing, you need to plan out your environment story. There are 2 types of game environment stories and 2 ways to communicate that story. What happened in the environment prior to the player getting there, and the story of how the character came to that environment. What are they doing there? How did the player arrive to at that environment? What brought them there, right? So write about the history of the environment. How did it come to be? And what is the player doing within the environment? Why are they there? This doesn't have to be extensive. A few paragraphs or even a list should be enough. This will help create a sense of place and purpose for the environment to exist. The environment will have its own background story, which will make decisions about the environment easier, such as placing props, texturing, and details. Now, step 5, drawing out each idea thoroughly. So, drawing out buildings, landscape areas, map boundaries, paths, alternate routes, flow, pacing, cover, player starts, AI positions, important locations, and focal points. So anything like that needs to be drawn out. No, the first few drafts are always very, very, very rough as you are figuring things out, planning and visualizing playable spaces. Now, with every iteration of the layout, you'll begin to get a better sense of the environment you want to create. Now, step 6, visual development. Visual development is the art direction that defines the visual style, lighting, and color palette of your environment. So you know how to make your world, the steps to making it, but how do you actually make them a world? So modeling and texturing. I'm going to show you guys 3 basic tips on creating, modeling, texturing your world. So to start off, this one's very important. Number 1, use perspective to your advantage. What do I mean by that necessarily? Because this looks like it's amazing, you know, Death Mountain. This giant, glorious mountain that's completely modeled, and this giant town right here. But with these houses, right? These awesome looking houses, 3D houses. Well, you know, actually, let's zoom out of our camera. And this mountain isn't actually a mountain. It's half a mountain with some plains that are modeled to look like part of the mountain, and the mountain itself is actually just a looks like somebody cut a circle in half, extruded it up a little bit, and made a mountain and textured it. Right. So use perspective to your advantage. You see these hills over here? Yeah, they ain't real. They're just plains, right? This castle, you can see the houses, the completely 3D houses that it looked like. Well, actually, no, they're pretty much flat plains. That castle back there that looks really good, it's actually just a few cubes with the back of it completely gone. Alright, so use perspective to your advantage. It's important. It saves 1, time, 2, performance, and 3, it can actually make your scene look a lot better if you do it correctly. Alright, now we're going to go on to number 2. Use texturing to your advantage. Now, what do I mean by that? Because in this scene here, everything looks awesome. So, use texturing to your advantage. What? Well, let's start off with the paths. They're not actually textured onto the field. They're completely separate models. Now, why is that? Why did they do that? Well, part of the reason why they did that is because it saves time, saves performance. And what I mean by that is it makes the game run a little bit smoother. So you have a giant field such as this field here. You have a problem creating a giant texture for this thing to make it look high detailed and all that stuff. You need paths on it. So why do we save performance on this if we can just create one texture, right? Well, for a giant field like this, think about it. If you create a texture, one texture, and you texture the paths onto it, it need to be a giant texture because you need to have these paths looking high quality. Alright, so if you zoom in here, it looks pretty high quality. Now, you wouldn't be able to copy the texture over, like, you wouldn't be able to make a seamless map with this. So you just have to have one gigantuan texture. And that would be a problem for a system like the 3DS or the GameCube or the N64, because guess what? It can't run stuff like that. So because it can't do that, you have to have smaller textures. And when you're making a smaller texture, you can't have paths. So that's why they model the paths on and create one texture for the entire path that's a little bit smaller. Another way to use texturing to your advantage is using alpha masks. So as you can see back here, you have alpha masked trees. Now, why do they do that? Well, one reason is because it saves time. Another reason is because it helps the performance of the game. Instead of modeling a bunch of trees, you could just texture some on and use an alpha mask and it looks like it's modeled. Now, The trees aren't the only thing that are using this. It's the grass. So if we zoom in here, the flowers, the grass here, it's billboarded. And then also some of the fences. So the fences are not modeled, they are textured. Let's go to the, some of the fences here. Yep, as you can see, it's completely alpha masked, just textured. And there is 2 sides to it. Some of the water is also alpha masked. This again helps with time. It saves time, and it also helps with the performance. Now, tip 3, bake your lighting. So when you're creating a big giant field like this, especially when you have a lot of shadows, a Nintendo system in general, doesn't really do well with real-time lighting. So a lot of the times, in almost every single one of the Zelda games, they bake their lighting in. And in this case, in Ocarina of Time, they bake it into the vertex, into the vertexes. So vertex paint, let's go over here. And as you can see, we can kind of color in some shadows. But if we go out of texture mode and go to vertex paint, you can see that the shadows are completely baked into the field. Now again, this is to save some time, and it also is to save performance, or help with performance. So that is it for this video, and let's summarize this. So what did we learn first? Well, we learned about good level design. So good level design is fun to navigate. Good level design doesn't rely on words to tell the story. Good level design tells the player what to do, but not how to do it. Good level design is constantly teaching the player something new, and good level design is surprising. Now, after that, we learned about how to actually create our level. So what are the steps to making it, drawing it out, the story in your environment, how to actually do it. Then finally, after that, we learned how to use this and actually model our scene. So the tips on how to actually model something. Thank you guys for watching that video, and I'll see you guys next Friday for another one of these Legend of Zelda videos.